A man who was homeless in Ottawa for years is looking for a Good Samaritan who helped turn his life around. Curtis is now living and working in Toronto, thanks in part, he says, to a weekly act of kindness. A plate of food left for him at an Ottawa food court. CTV's Joanne Schnurr caught up with Curtis earlier today. How did this story come about, Joanne?
Well, Graham, CTV was interviewing Curtis for a story about mental health and the homeless. He talked about this man he calls his little giant, a small red-headed man with a big heart who 15 years ago changed Curtis's life.
Life is very different these days for 54-year-old Curtis. He's off the streets, working part-time in Toronto, and living in affordable housing through a group called HouseLink.
I'm live.
Back in Ottawa in early 2000, Curtis slept where he could and ate where he could, often sneaking into the food court at the Rideau Centre to grab leftovers off empty plates.
It would take a long time some days to find enough food to get you through the night.
Curtis says one day he felt someone watching him, which he says when you're in the business of stealing scraps of food, it's not a good thing.
The young man walked away from his table, but to Curtis's surprise, left a full plate of food, knife, fork, and drink.
I guess a random act of kindness, but one which, for someone who was living on the street at the time, it was one that gave everything to me that I needed at the moment. You know, it gave me a little bit of hope.
For months, every Tuesday at noon, the same scenario played out until Curtis moved on somewhere else.
It just helped me to understand the power of one, for lack of a better term, you know, how like just a random act like that of one person, what a difference you can make in another person's life.
It's a beautiful story. It really is. You know, I think it speaks to a sense of care and compassion that I like to think characterizes most residents of our city.
Clearly, the actions of one are not enough to end homelessness, but Curtis says this man's actions were the impetus to him seeking help. He now is the board president of HouseLink in Toronto and wants his little giant to know what's become of him, to meet him and say thanks.
Maybe just to shake his hand and maybe take him out for lunch. Wouldn't that be cool?
All Curtis knows of the man was that he was maybe in his 20s or 30s, reddish blonde hair, a beard, wearing a shirt and tie. He'd probably be in his 40s or 50s now, and if he's out there, well, we'd love to know. Graham.
We sure would. CTV's Joanne Schnurr reporting live. Thanks, Joanne.
Welcome.